Hi, Maisha, psychotherapist here from Serenity Healings Counseling. So, I wanted to do a little bit of a demonstration of how adverse childhood effects, also known as ACEs, as well as generational trauma, can actually affect a child into adulthood. So, looking specifically at the individual rather than looking at the collective. So, let's start. We have two glasses full of water. This is dad and this is mom. Say dad has some difficulties in his childhood, right? Maybe he didn't have a dad, maybe he didn't have a mom, or maybe dad wasn't around, so his mom had to be hyper aware and focus a lot on the finances, focus a lot on being a provider and those roles. And due to that, now she wasn't able to be there for her son emotionally as a caregiver. And because his mom wasn't able to be there for him emotionally and psychologically and attend to his needs in that sense, he never learned how to express or understand his own emotions, right? And that is trauma stressor number one. And that goes right in there. Now, we also have to mention the fact that his dad's not around, right? Number two. Okay. Now, there's a whole bunch more. Imagine going into a social environment. So now we talk about his school. He's at the point where maybe he wants to fit in because he's not getting that attention at home. He doesn't really hear too much from his dad. So the best thing that he can do is, well, let me fit in at school. What can I do to try to be popular? What can I do to get good attention? And throughout all of that, he's not focusing on grades. Now, he's not focusing on classes and possibly even causing a commotion in school. And so the teachers automatically label him as a bad kid. So now he's not getting the education he deserves. He's just being labeled as a problem child. So the people in his support system are continuously failing him, right? Now, also, because dad is not there, he never learned how to maintain relationships. He never learned the importance and value of maintaining and keeping long-term relationships and respecting the people that you're in a relationship with. And respecting that person first starts with giving them your time to actually show them that, hey, I really do value this relationship. And now, because of that, he's either incredibly controlling or he has an attitude where he doesn't really care about maintaining and keeping relationships. So it's either one extreme of, if I'm dating this girl and I'm with her, she can't ever leave me, right? Because now I have these abandonment issues because my dad wasn't there for me. Now I have a misconception of what communication looks like because when my dad was there, when my mom was there, they constantly argued. They were constantly yelling. They were constantly screaming. And I was scared as a child. And I had no mechanisms to defend myself because I was a little kid. So instead, I worried and I got scared and I was incredibly intimidated. So the only type of communication that I know is a yelling and screaming match. And that's how you show someone that you really love them. Now he ends up finding a nice girl, right? And all she sees is this big, tall glass of wonderfulness. And she's like, gotta have him. Then they start to progress in their relationship, and she notices little things. She notices that he's not very attentive to her. She notices that it's really hard for him to express his feelings. She notices that he either goes really quiet in their relationship or he's really controlling. She notices a couple of things. But let's talk about her. Let's talk about what happened in her childhood, right? Mom and dad were there, but did they have a loving relationship? No. There was a lot of things that she got away with because her parents were not attentive to her, because they kind of just let her do the things that she wanted. Or maybe they were too controlling and they didn't let her do enough so that way she can gain life experiences and her brain could actually develop. So right there, her parents are stunting her development. And that's number one. Now, what if, unfortunately, the parents get divorced? Number two, what if she was sexually assaulted or molested as a child? Number 3, what if she witnessed a lot of violence, not just with her parents, but within her community, within her school, because maybe her mom couldn't afford to send her to a nice school and live in a nice neighborhood. So they lived in a very poor neighborhood. So access to proper education was not something that she ever fully received. A little bit like him. So they actually have some things to relate on here. Now we mix this up. And this is mom. This is dad. And now they decide to have a kid. Nothing has been worked through. They fight. They argue. They get into screaming matches. And they have a very unhealthy relationship. But because they love each other, they're gonna continue to make it work. And so now they decide to have a kid. It's gonna get a little bit messy here, but that's okay. Life is messy sometimes. It can't be perfect. So we're gonna pour, because this is the mom. We're gonna pour some of the mom in here. And we're gonna pour some of the dad. And as you see, this is also where that genetic predisposition comes in, that ideology that within your genes, you are more likely to experience mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, a few mental health disorders. You're more likely to experience it if your parents also went through trauma or if they have those same mental illnesses. That is genetic predisposition. So as you see, this child is not born clear. Already before the kid has even touched his mom's hand, both of his parents came together to make him, but there's genetic predisposition in here. Okay, that's also generational trauma. Because now this child this child is actually starting backwards. They're starting life at -10. As you see, their glass is dark, full of dirt, rather than a child who has 2 parents that have not experienced trauma. As you saw in the beginning of the video, these cups were clear. Okay. Now we have this child enter the picture, and the cycle continues. This child sees mom and dad arguing a lot, and she gets scared, or he gets scared. He can't do anything about it because he's just a kid. And the cycle continues and continues and continues. And this is why it's important, and not just when you have kids, it's actually crucial that you work on this before you have kids. But it is super, super important that you work on healing a lot of the things that you experienced in your childhood. So that way you could give your child the best likelihood of being able to live and have a functioning adulthood. An adulthood where they are gaining meaningful and seeking meaningful connections, where they understand people and they understand themselves, where they have self-esteem and confidence and all of those things, and they're not looking for self-esteem and confidence within someone else or something else. Or they're not just looking to gain that self-esteem and confidence from 2 parents who don't even have self-esteem and confidence, who don't know how to teach that because they don't have it. And so the child has to go out and find it somewhere.